Hi, this is Daryl Bars taking over for Hugh Riley at Liquid Lunch today, and I'm pleased to have with me today Dr. Thalia, a naturopathic doctor and author of the book The Confident Food Shopper, right there. So tell me, Thalia, what's in this book, The Confident Food Shopper, more or less? Just a little bit of an overview, what you
Sure.
were after? Yeah.
It's almost like a reference book, I'd say, in its style, with humor and edge, that I wrote for Canadians on basically how can you navigate the aisles of the shopping, the grocery store, with confidence. And it goes through everything that you could ever possibly want to know about a food package. So if you pick up a package, say cereal, you're going to see the nutrition facts label and deal with that. There's the ingredients. There's all kinds of statements like, high in protein, high in fiber, all kinds of certifications, fair trade, organic.
Right.
I deal with all of those, but then there's also things that we can't see that are, called the hidden ingredients, like GMOs or packaging materials that can make their way in, sanitizers used in the factories that can land up in your food, so sort of antibiotics. Everything that a shopper wants to know, so that they don't have to rely on whatever it is that they try to rely on in order to make their decisions, which can be very confusing.
Yeah, because I feel like now we're in a time period where we all have a little bit more knowledge as shoppers, but sometimes that knowledge is a dangerous thing, and it's like walking into the supermarket. You almost know that no matter what you get, it's not going to be as healthy as you'd like it to be. So there's like, it's like, what do you do with it? It's almost like how you get rid of all the food stuff afterwards, what goes in recycling, garbage, etc. You walk in the grocery store, and I've heard that if you walk around the perimeter and just get all the fresh stuff and avoid the inner aisles, you're doing better already.
Absolutely, that is great advice. You could probably enhance the quality of your foods a lot, and there's still more to know within that section.
Right.
But I know a lot of people are not there, not ready to get rid of everything in the aisles, so there can be various steps. And I think it's great that people have skepticism. They should be skeptical. But you're right, a little bit of knowledge can be a problem, especially with access to the internet today. Things do tend to get exaggerated or described in a very black and white way. And that's where you get information going from one extreme to the other, and that's so confusing for consumers.
So if we walk in the store and you're seeing even like that, sometimes even the good stuff on the perimeters, like the fruit and that, it's so overpackaged that are you dealing with that in the book as well, like the packaging and how that affects overall environmental impact, or are we dealing just with the food inside the package?
I deal with the packages in the sense of how can it affect your health when there's, say, if it's in saran wrap, it's contacting your food, and say lining of cans with BPA that can make their way into the food.
So this will leach into the foods?
On my own blogging and such, I deal a lot, when I'm with that sort of continued learning beyond this book, I deal a lot with environmental issues. But in the book, I just stick to how does it affect your health, but not only by putting it in your mouth and what it can cause, but how food processing can affect animal welfare and the environment in that, and how it can come back to bite us.
Right.
So even if it doesn't affect us directly now in the moment, or we can't see it, it will in the bigger scheme.
Right. And you call yourself also the classroomdoc.com. Now, what is that all about, the title there?
The Classroom Doc just came from my desire to be a teacher, and I mean, as a naturopath, we're supposed to be, or one of the founding principles is doctor as teacher. I just feel that it's more important to empower people and to educate them than to just tell them what to do, because it's too much to tell people what to do.
Right. Okay.
Also, I mean, there's different teaching styles. I think the way I teach in this book is I like people to make up their own mind. So though I obviously have opinions, as you can see in some of my sarcasm in there.
Give an example of the sarcasm, for instance. Like what?
Example of the sarcasm? Gosh, I haven't read my book in a while. Can't
Well, here's one on page 130. It says, we'll get into this later about
Okay.
GMO crops, but it says, in terms of their safety, you and I are the experiment,
Yeah.
I suppose.
Yeah, you and I are the experiment. I don't know if that's so much sarcasm.
Yeah,
it's
that's
just,
true.
Just the
truth,
truth,
unfortunately.
Just the plain awful
That's the hard
truth.
thing. Where does the sarcasm say? Just true, a lot of this stuff. Like, it's sad, but it's not even sarcastic. It's just like the straight truth.
I guess that's in my nature, is to be a little bit sarcastic. And people have read the book, and in the reviews when they write, we'll talk about my humor. So that's been something that's been relayed back to me. But yeah, there are very few things that are black and white, and so I give the information. I leave it up for people to make up their mind. Like, where do I want to fall? How far do I want to go with this? Obviously, I hope that they.
Okay, so when you walk in the grocery store, you think, at least most quasi-informed shoppers are going to think, okay, if I go organic, it's going to cost me more, but I'm probably safer. What's your opinion on that? Is that true, or are there caveats to that?
Yeah, true with caveats. I think that definitely buying organic, if you can afford it, is overall going to make you'll be better off, and the world by and large will be better off. Not everyone can afford everything as organic, so I have in there it's called the Dirty Dozen. So this is a list that comes out by the Environmental Working Group every year, saying like, what are the foods that are the most highly sprayed, where you really got to be careful, so strawberries and apples and such. So people can use their budget that way. But the caveat, yes, of course, is, and this always happens, it's just life, that big companies, I won't say any names, but try to take advantage, of course, of any way to make money, and organic is trendy, and so you have companies that are not performing to the spirit, and they're looking for loopholes.
Right.
And of course that happens, so it still is useful for consumers to go to health shows, to go to farmers markets, and to get to know there are a lot of companies that are not yet certified that maybe are better than some of the organic ones, or companies doing what I call biodynamic farming, which is even better. But in the spirit of certified organic, it's not, I think people reduce it to something very simple and just say it means less pesticides or chemical pesticides, which is true.
Right.
But there's so much more built into it about protecting the soil, the environment, relations.
Trying to have a permaculture in that, and going from there. So farms.
Yeah. And there are companies that legitimately try to meet the spirit, and I think it is important to, as much as we can.
Now, on the same line, this may be a question you can't answer, but it came to mind. Amazon has recently bought Whole Foods, for instance, right?
Yes, I did hear about that.
Now, does this compromise the future of Whole Foods as a truly healthy, quote-unquote, store, or is the verdict not clear yet?
Well, I have no idea where
soon.
where things will go. It's too soon. I suppose if as somebody has shopped there, I'll be able to tell in the future if I see things are changing again with this where there's corners being cut. Not necessarily going to happen, but I have no idea. But having said that, I will say there's a lot of products in health food stores that by my standards, which is my right to set where my bar is, are not health foods, but are where there's money to be made, people will try. So there's a lot of products that people think are healthy just because they say gluten-free.
So for example?
Nut milks. So I'm not saying they're all bad and they're poison or anything.
Right.
But they're a trend because a lot of people are trying to stay away from dairy, and they're considered a health food. A lot of people use almond milk, for example. I created a whole infographic comparing like the difference between if you take raw almonds and blend them with water, thus making real
true
natural almond milk,
versus,
and what you're getting, a pasteurized product with all kinds of additives and thickeners. To me, that's not a health food.
Right.
And it's also a waste of money. There's so few almonds in it.
And packaging and everything else.
And packaging, yeah. So,
so if you were to make your own, for instance, even just putting some 10 almonds in a blender with some water, and boom, you got some almond milk, more or less.
Yeah, and you can use a natural thickener and a natural sweetener if you want to embellish it. Or something like cashews, which don't have a thick skin.
Right.
There's certain things that are very easy to get around and make. and
Right.
can be better. If I were to open, which I'm not going, but if I were to open my own health food store, I think maybe only 80% of what I see in some health, or 20% of what I see in some health food stores would be in mine, and it would be a lot more groceries. The health
Yeah.
food stores have to get away from all of these substitute foods into
Yeah.
just more real food.
Yeah, I think there are a few stores in Toronto that are really trying to live by that standard.
Yeah, there are definitely health food stores are
Yeah.
all over from.
Like I'm thinking, and this sort of cafe bar food place, Alternity, just opened by Bata Shoe Museum, and it's coming
okay.
from Alternative Thinking, which is on Bathurst, just below Bloor, where in one of the Honest Ed's like locations.
Yeah.
And that also sells like really like, you know, everything's packaged in sort of paper, and there's no, I mean, there's a lot of conscientiousness, I think, in the product versus going
Yeah.
into some stores, yes, where there's 50 different, you know, nut milks. And,
Yeah.
you know, we get, like, I was, I guess, when I found out I was sort of lactose intolerant to some degree, and I think a lot of people think they are or might be or to some degree are, and then I switched to soy milk, and then I think I was drinking soy milk for probably 5 years till someone said, hey, it affects your testosterone levels, which I had never heard of. But
I'm not an anti-soy. But
yeah,
go
but
on.
now it seems like that is. So,
Yeah.
and then when you
Yeah,
think
yeah.
of the way that soy is grown, and is it GMO soy, and all the
Yeah.
stuff, it starts to think like, do we really know what's so bad about the milk industry? What do you think of dairy, for instance, as a drinkable product for people?
I use dairy myself, so I think with every food group, it's a matter of looking at the nuances in it. So I think milk, as most people drink it, which is
Right.
going to be probably skim milk from the, you know, just the regular dairy industry, it doesn't seem to fare well with most people and is not a healthy product. For example, like with prostate cancer and with regards to foods, there's the strongest correlation is between dairy consumption and prostate cancer. But there's a big difference between that and, let's say, we have a small farm of ethically raised goats, and we have goat's milk, and we take that and ferment it and make kefir. This can probably be a very healthy daily drink,
Right.
but it's still dairy. So it depends. How is it made, and where does it come from? And that's why, you know, I have the whole section on the stories behind your foods, because that makes a big difference.
Yeah, and even as things grow,
Yeah.
like kefir, or I say kefir, not sure the right pronunciation, but
I'm not sure either.
when I go into a Russian store in Toronto, for instance, and they have like 10 different brands of kefir, versus, because it's a very popularly consumed product, let's say.
Yeah.
And then I don't even know which one is that, which is the one that maybe is the healthiest or not. I mean, so it's, as soon as
Yeah.
something becomes popular, too, all of a sudden, boom, everyone's making it,
Yeah.
and different cultures consume different things.
I make
it's
my
not-
own, so.
You make your own kefir.
Yeah.
Okay. I used to make my own yogurt once upon a time.
Yeah.
But it can be done, but it
fun.
takes time. And how do you make your own kefir?
Well, you just have what's called the kefir grains. Now, often you get it. I got it from one of my neighbors, but you can buy them, the dry ones, and it's extremely easy. You just I buy organic milk, costs a fortune, in a glass bottle that can be
Right.
recycled,
Yeah.
and you just pour that over the grains in a jar, and you wait, about 24 hours if it's in the heat like it is today. It's ready. I mean, it's very simple. That's
Right.
one of the simpler things. Making
Nice.
sourdough bread, not so much.
Not so much, right?
Not so simple. But there's certain things that are very simple, and
Yeah.
that's one of them.
And even
Gratifying.
today, and I was mentioning before the interview that I'd read a headline that Health Canada or some group had followed the processing of organic milk versus regular milk, and by the end said there was very little difference. And I need to research that.
Yeah.
But that's scary too. And often we do find that, these products that are considered healthy or better. I mean, a good example is bottled drinking water that people think is better than Toronto City water, and yet it's been proven time and again that it isn't. Especially big companies that are really not caring, like Nestle, for
Yes.
instance, throwing company
It's
names
okay
out.
to say
but
we
it's okay.
dislike Nestle.
We dislike Nestle, both of us, I guess, at the same time. And it doesn't even taste good. First of
No,
all,
it's
and
awful.
not to mention all the plastic problems and everything like that. So there's such a long way to go. And I imagine, like when we were younger, before plastics became ubiquitous, I mean, you'd go shopping either and you'd get everything in a box or in a cloth bag or something, and there'd be no packaging of anything. And
Yeah.
it's like now you look at what your garbage production is, so much of it is just packaging waste, and everything. And like you're saying, this is also leaching into the food we're doing. It's leaching into the soil. Everything is happening, and we're consuming it. And I guess one of the oddities, due to the medical profession, perhaps, but we're living longer. So this is also what, the counter argument that people say, oh, so there's GMOs,
Yes.
so there's this and that. But meanwhile, look, we're living longer than we ever did back in the day when things were truly healthy. But, that's, I think, more to do with modern medicine. But
Well, with regards to longevity, I think the one argument I've heard is that the statistics are skewed by the fact that the mortality rate for infants used to be so high, so that really lowers the average age dramatically. But also, what's the point of talking about how long we're living if we're not living well into if we have Alzheimer's and cancer, 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 Canadians, and I don't think that was the case. So we might be living and making it throughout childhood.
Yeah, and it speaks about statistics again and how they can be cherry picked and skewed, and we don't really know. And you throw a statistic out, and it's it just, but it's part of like the problem with what you're getting at in the book. There's just so much to know. About anything we take in, any piece of information. We really have to judge. We have to think. We can't look for easy answers. Nothing is black and white. I was at Mariposa Festival, for instance, this weekend, and all of the vendors had to use a special cellulose product, I think made from corn something, so that it could all be composted.
That's great.
It all broke down. And then I thought, that's great.
Yeah.
On the other hand, then I'm thinking, where did all this corn product come from? And I know because I've driven through like Iowa and places in the States where it's just hundreds of kilometers of cornfield and all GMO corn.
Probably GMO corn.
Probably.
Yeah.
So like almost anything we do, it seems there's a counter argument to it or a complex way of thinking around it, and then we never know is what I'm doing right. And it reminds me of a short story I read once where a character almost went crazy trying to think of how to throw their garbage out because was this recyclable? Like it almost is a paralysis of movement. What is good, and you sort of have to just chill out, I guess, and think, well, you do your best, and that's it. And you go on. Nothing is perfect. You try to do a little bit better than what you would have done, and that's probably the best you can do. But.
Yeah, we can just do our best. I think that. Well, for me, it's easy because I love being involved in investigating foods. I enjoy cooking. There really has to be a dramatic shift in how we look at food and not see it as an inconvenience to spend the time. I know a lot of people say they don't have time to cook, or maybe to go to cooking classes, but then the statistics, again, on how many hours people spend on Netflix and on the internet and on their phones. I'm sure in many cases they do. If we could just, especially at a younger age, just impart an excitement or pleasure around food, then maybe it wouldn't seem like such a task. And so going to the Whole Health Food Show in Toronto would be then a pleasurable experience. And it's much easier for me to trust a company when I meet someone face to face, whether it's there or at the farmer's market, and have a conversation, than just looking at products in the store, and having that kind of contact used to be
a regular thing.
A regular thing. Maybe it was with the milkman or at your door, but
and milk used to be delivered in a bottle and used again. Everything is just so different. So we're moving into this time of convenience, whereas you're saying Netflix and all this, and the younger generation has even more trouble than the older one in getting off their devices. There used to be an idea where the modernity of the food industry would be like the space food, in a sense. It would just be a package, you'd add some water, and that's it. So we have to hope that we don't go in that direction. But a lot of our food is moving in that direction. At the same time, there's also this great love of cooking and all kind of cooking shows on TV. So, I mean, there's a dichotomy, as usual.
There is,
and we have to hope that sort of humanity wins out on this one, but who knows? Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
You can never. I think it's about you have to pick up your principles, and for me, my principle is my health over convenience. I don't see cooking and such as inconvenient because I love it, but I think we've unfortunately wanting everything now and saving time has really been to our detriment. And maybe we think it's better for us, but I don't see the happiness it's creating in the franticness of having to, just fit more things in. And human contact is so important. So going out to a farmer's market, it's not just about the time. It's about the connections and the community it creates and the support and the whole trickle-down effect. If we think of it that way, maybe it would be easier to justify.
It's entertainment just going to the market.
Yeah, or if you have kids so you don't have time, take your kids to the market, cook with your kids, just involve them. We need to, they're sponges. We need to brainwash them, but in a good way.
Back to corporations buying, even with GMOs. Monsanto was bought out recently by another company, Bayer, which we're generally think of as a pretty good company because it helps us with aspirin when we have headaches. So I'm not going to go there, but I mean, in a sense, it doesn't have this evil name that Monsanto has, and now it's sort of almost like what's going to happen with GMO products when people can't rally against Monsanto. Is it like a beautiful cover for that? And so maybe some thoughts on this and of GMO products in general, especially, let's say, corn, because that's certainly ubiquitous as corn is produced. Yeah. So what are some thoughts on that?
Well, I don't know what's going to happen with this merger because that's...
Yeah, no, it's the second new one I brought up today, but it just shows how the big companies keep eating even bigger companies.
Yeah, it is a problem that we lose. Yeah. I guess Monsanto was a convenient name we could focus on, but certainly there's other companies that, like Syngenta, that have an equally bad track record, but we tend to have Monsanto as a popular company to pick on, and rightly so. I think with regards to GMOs, that too, like with the organic, gets oversimplified, so people just focus on the argument, are GMOs, do they cause, cancer of the liver, this one, or not? Like a sort of very narrow approach. But with GMOs, it's so much bigger than that. It's looking at, the use of, for example, a pesticide, roundup, and that's become pretty popular too. So roundup contains glyphosate, and the World Health Organization said that it's a probable human carcinogen. So because most GMO crops are genetically modified to be resistant to the Roundup, they can spray so much more, and that creates weeds that are resistant, so it's kind of like with antibiotic resistance. It has all kinds of unknown effects on the environment in terms of the soil, in the air, insects around us, and we just have no idea. It's sort of the worst. Many things are an experiment, but this is the worst one ever because you can't take genes back out of the environment. You can't clean up that mess. So it's such a serious thing, and it's not treated with. I think when it comes to GMOs, because the consequences are so huge and so irreversible, that the onus for proof of it being safe should have a much higher level than other things.
And I think in Europe, the structure is far more severe against GMOs than it is in Canada and the United States. I think the laws are more stringent.
There are companies that certainly have banned GMOs. I think that has in part to do with the public, the people there, and I don't know what, because I don't live there, but why they tend to stand up more for. Because you see the same companies like Kellogg's or Nestle producing the same products, whether it's a cereal or not, but in one country they have natural flavoring and coloring, and then in North America not, because they'll adjust to, if people have the squeaky wheel.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we need to be more vocal, and
And I thought on that with Kellogg's, etc., I had thought about a year ago, I had read that the government was going to crack down a bit on sugared cereals, and yet I go to the grocery store and there's no crackdown. I'm still seeing the sugared cereals like the Cocoa Puffs, and all this that are fed mainly to children. At what point do you feel the government should seriously step in and either have like a surtax on this? Because at any given day, the thing's on sale and you can buy a great big box of cereal for $2.99. And this is going to feed a lot of people versus, you could pay $2.99 for one organic apple, for instance.
Yes.
So this is the problem. This is why, obviously not everyone can afford it, and at least 3/4 of the population of North America can't afford, has to shop very carefully. So the companies are providing this cheap stuff that fills you up to some degree and probably contributes to the obesity rates in North America as well at the same time with all the sugar in it.
Yeah.
It's tasty.
Yeah.
But it's garbage to some degree, but the government allows it to go on, and we're ultimately paying a health tax in a sense because these are going to result in issues that will you'll have to get medical help, etc. So do you think the government should have a more active role in like a health tax on certain foods like they do on cigarettes, etc.? Mm-hmm. Should it be on sugared cereals, for instance? What do you think of it?
I'd say yes.
Yes?
Yes,
okay.
I do. I mean, one of the main reasons why there's so much corn and soy, with not just sugar in our foods, is because of government funding for those crops. And so they're so cheap that it's really hard for a company to justify using something better. We have natural preservatives that we could use, like rosemary, but they cost so much more. So, as long as the government funds these cheaper monocrops.
So why is the government funding this, or how is the government funding this? I'm not aware of that. So just
that's not really an area that I've looked into. I know that they do. They've always subsidized like the many industries, including definitely for soy and for corn. I'm not sure with sugar. The Canadian government is subsidizing them, but these companies are just very powerful. There's not a lot of detailed information about Health Canada or the Canadian government that I find, and the food companies, as much as you can find out there on the internet about what goes on in the U.S., but I consider it's just a micro version.
Right. It's collusion between lobbyists, in a sense, for companies and what the government,
Yeah, Health Canada has to placate the needs of, so companies will ask for exceptions or keep trying to get deadlines extended for things they have to change, and Health Canada has to juggle a lot, and I'm assuming they don't have the resources to micromanage to the extent that they need to, which is why I just feel that it's better to take things in a grassroots way into our own hands than wait for Health Canada to solve it. I just don't think it's going to happen. Okay. Even with the best intentions of some people in Health Canada, I'm sure they're not all evil. I'm sure they're not all conspiring to
there's
kill
lobbyists
us.
and power groups, etc. So it happens. We're aware of that by now.
I think grassroots is.
So if we stick to cereal, for instance, and the difficulty of shopping for cereal, we got. Let's say when we think of what's a healthy cereal, well, granola will probably come to mind. But I'm sure you can buy a granola in a package, and it's just so full of sugar and all that stuff. Versus again, the true way to do it, I guess, would be to make it yourself, but that would take time, and then no one's going to have that time. So how do we, let's say, just for a breakfast cereal, how would we navigate the supermarket to make a decent choice? What do you think of that?
There are some good options, but first and foremost, I'd say that the whole idea of cereal as being something we need to have for breakfast is just was just created. There's nothing innately necessary about having cereal for breakfast. You can have anything for breakfast that you'd have for dinner.
True.
Leftovers.
True. Yep.
So people need to, I guess, they could just not have cereal. That would be one.
Well, then they'd have bread, toast.
No, it could be anything you have for any meal. There's no reason why you need cereal.
Yeah.
Cereal is just it's a convenience, I guess, milk and cereal.
Yeah. Well, this was all made, like you're saying, there's no reason. It was actually made up. I read a book on this by Kellogg's back in the late 1800s. As like this concept of a breakfast cereal that actually he thought was healthy and would help, and maybe at the beginning maybe the idea was positive, but it's spawned a whole new way of eating.
Yeah.
And now we take it for granted that breakfast is going to be, if it's not going to be a heavy breakfast, sort of the meat and eggs kind of breakfast, then it's going to be toast and coffee or cereal and coffee. I mean, we do get into this pattern. I remember traveling, I think it was maybe in Burma, now Myanmar, where what was for sale in the markets for breakfast was what I would consider dinner. It was like noodle soups and different things with meat and stuff. So everything's arbitrary and cultural.
Exactly. People say, "Oh, that's weird that you have that for breakfast." But there are good options. there are more and more companies making, and they'll usually come in a smaller bag, and it's sort of an instant cereal, but what they are, they're really tiny grains or even seeds like amaranth,
Right.
and the kind that you can add hot water and they sort of instantly can eat them. So you're getting whole grains, which is definitely a great option. You can combine it with other things. That's instant. It's more expensive, but much more filling, because cereal's not very filling.
Okay. So I have a bag of organic amaranth at home, and I don't know what to do with it exactly. So what would you do with amaranth, for instance?
So with amaranth or even whole oatmeal, actually one of the great ways to make it faster is the night before. You can put it in one of those insulators. Just pour boiling water in there, let it sit overnight, and it's pretty much, it's ready and cooked in the morning. You can heat it up in 1 minute. You can add in you can leave soaking in it some nuts and seeds as well.
Right.
So in the morning, you just basically heat it up for 1 minute. You add a dollop of some good yogurt on it,
Right.
whatever it is.
There you go.
It's just a bit of preparation, but the time it takes is very... So you have to learn to just redo your habits. And once they become a habit, there's not a lot to think about. Just like you
Right.
don't think about, cereal and milk, I have to add those two together, and I have to remember that. Well, no, because it's such a habit.
But it is so easy. Like, it's based on convenience. It takes virtually no time to pour some cereal, pour some milk,
Yeah.
versus, and that's what even with making oatmeal, I mean, the instant oats are not that healthy compared to steel-cut oats.
Yeah.
And steel-cut oats, though, take time. Either you prepare it, like you're saying, the night before by soaking it.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the way things are packaged, like with the instant oatmeal that has so much sugar and all that stuff, and then this is given to kids and think, oh, this is healthy. But it's not, because it has all this kind of stuff in a package. And it's just sugar, basically, with a little bit of oats for texture or something, and versus steel-cut oats, which you give to somebody and think, what is this? Like they don't even recognize that this is oatmeal, and this is this is part of the problem. Like we're so far away from natural food.
Yeah. If convenience is the number one most important thing to a person, you're probably not going to be healthy. That's just the honest answer. If that is your absolute most important, there's nothing more convenient than junk food. But it's very inconvenient to have a chronic illness later on. And that's going to cost you a lot of time and money.
Yeah.
So I think, but there are ways, these hacks to make things faster if it's very important, and that's soaking overnight. All you have to do is heat the kettle and pour the water.
Right.
And if it's something you do every single day, just like brushing your teeth, you're probably going to remember before you go to bed.
You got it done. Okay.
Yeah.
And with the way that we eat, because we are in habits, one of the newer habits is veganism, let's say, or a vegan diet. There's been paleo, there's been gluten-free, etc., macro, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So what do you think of some of these different trends and ideas, philosophies of eating in general?
I think many of these different diets get, the trendiness is a problem, will be helpful for different people. There is, from my years of experience as a naturopath and just the many things I know about these different diets, there's none that is just the best for everybody. No such thing. And all of them, if done right, potentially, for the right person, could be healthy. And there's different advantages and disadvantages. So I'll give you some examples. So I mean, I love veganism obviously because it's great to, from an ethical perspective, that is important. Animal welfare is important, and certainly if we wanted to have a huge impact on the earth, everybody being vegan would
help.
Yeah, it definitely would help. But not everybody can tolerate being completely vegan with the iron levels or other things. And there's many people who are vegan so you can be eating a vegan diet well or really badly.
Right.
And I think for people who don't know a lot about food, going vegan all of a sudden, it can maybe make their diet a lot worse than before. They're not going to necessarily be more healthy. Same with the gluten-free. Some people will feel a lot better when they're off grains because of so many reasons, maybe because a lot of them are just flour products. But I don't have anything against, grains as a whole.
Right, because again, even some of these flours are badly produced, cheap GMO grains versus really healthy grains that are making the bread or whatever. for instance?
Yeah, there's no GMO grains right now, but the problem is that a lot of the marketed gluten-free products are just really unhealthy. Breads and cookies and all of these things are just absolutely processed. So whatever transition someone makes, they should see, unless they're really knowledgeable about food or willing to cook everything from scratch, should see a nutritionist or a naturopath. And same with the paleo. It can be, you can have someone who's really being careful to source non-factory farmed, healthier animals and eating them in small portions. Also realizing that we're never going to be those people. We're not living there very active. We're not living in that time. And we can never match it. Or you can have people that are just not getting enough fiber and eating a lot of factory farmed food, and it's high on the food chain, so there's a high toxic load. So there's a give and take. A vegan person will have a very relatively low toxic load if they're not eating processed food, because the higher on the food chain you go, the worse. So you still, whatever diet you pick, you still need to be conscious about what you're eating and how you put it together. There's no guarantee that one is good or the other is good.
True. Okay.
Yes.
So do your homework.
Which one are you falling on?
Yeah. So another.
But mostly plant-based, I would say.
Yeah, plant-based would help.
All of those would be, no matter which one it is.
Eat more vegetables.
80% plant-based, even if you're eating animals or not, and stay away from the factory-farmed products.
Okay. So, and we walk into the grocery store again, and we're hoping that the government's done some sort of job. It's approved different things, but what is the most unsafe things that are approved by the government that find their way in our food?
That's a matter of there's no way to specifically rate what ingredient is the most unsafe. But there are many, I would say, they fall in three categories. Some ingredients that are just clearly safe because they're whole foods, and some that are maybe, we're not sure and the jury's out, and some that clearly shouldn't be in our foods and are banned in many countries. So one example would be azodicarbonamide, which is even hard to say. This is a leavening agent, and it's found in sort of fluffy burger buns and white breads, not all of them. But it's banned in a number of countries, and as I put in the book here, though I couldn't find the specific details, but in Singapore, apparently, if you use it, you can get a jail sentence up to 15 years.
Wow.
Or a hefty fine, but it's still used here. It's really remarkable how you can have something with that kind of severe consequences in one country. I think that many of the artificial sweeteners should be like sucralose. Everyone talks about aspartame, but sucralose is another problematic one. With more recent studies from Italy. It also depends on who's evaluated the science, right? So there's a few bodies that I found very reliable when doing my research, and one is the Center for Science in the Public Interest. Unlike Health Canada, they are, it's a neutral group of scientists in the U.S. and Canada, and they review the science without an interest in the particular outcome, and they're not funded by any food companies or relationships. So they will have a list. They've got a list probably of about 20 ingredients that they consider should not be eaten at all. Others, like carrageenan, that are, the evidence isn't clear, so maybe we should limit how much we have. And then things that they consider safe. But I don't think that we're doing a sufficient job, or that we can rely on Health Canada's approval to, and it's not a bash against Health Canada, just the reality.
So the book, like if one really got into the details in the book again, they'd be able to navigate the aisles of the shelf.
Yeah.
The shelf, aisles, whatever, much better than we're doing already.
Yes, I have my own list in the chapter on ingredients. I have my own list of ingredients. I say that if you spot these in your food, you should absolutely avoid this food. Other ones that try to limit, because I'm being reasonable. Now those ones try to limit, you could also eliminate. That makes it easier. Was one of the biggest problems with consumers that I found, not based on a study, but from so many people I've talked to and how they shop, is people tend to be very focused on the nutrition facts label, and they use that to pick their foods or sometimes the claims. So
I mean, like how many calories?
how many calories, how much fat,
Right.
how much sugar. It's good to pay attention to the sugar. But all that shows you is the quantities, but it shows you nothing about the quality.
Right.
And you have to look at the ingredients to interpret what you're seeing. So it doesn't matter how many fats on it, but what kind of fats are they? Are they trans fats? Which, as I explained, there's not always obvious, even if it says 0 trans fats. Are they, have they been processed fats? Or is it a cold-pressed olive oil? Is it, a processed soy or corn oil, GMOs? Makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
So the one bit of advice I would give is just don't use that. It can be your first screen, but never pick a product based on because it's low fat or low calorie or 0 cholesterol. None of those are going to guarantee you in any way that your food is healthy or safe.
And this is another problem because these are trends of the last 10, 15 years, those issues you just talked about, and that consumes our mind, and then we forget about the quality behind it because you're counting calories or something like that, or no fat. So we're just like, I don't know, the consumer's head is spinning, doesn't know what to do. You mentioned olive oil even. I find this a problematic thing because probably good olive oil shouldn't cost, $6 for a big bottle. It probably is not the same as one that costs $30, but then what are you going to, you have to source and look at this and trust where you're buying. So almost every decision.
In those health shows, farmers markets, I really... for me, I can trust in the products I get because I've met a lot of the people, or you can look on someone's website.
Right.
You won't be perfect right off the bat, but you will continue to learn or become more easy. It should be a life skill to learn how to shop or to cook. I mean, it should be probably a most important primary skill, not mathematics,
right? And it's not taught in school, really, right?
Yeah.
This is why we need a classroom doctor, right, to fix the system.
Yeah.
From the core.
Yeah.
Right.
It should be something that every person feels like. Of course, I have to learn about food and where it comes from. How can I not know where it comes from? But we're just so far removed.
Right. We're into convenience, and that's where we're at right now.
Yeah. Okay. So then the things that our ancestors did or took for granted seem strange to us. Oh, I don't have the time to do that. But they might have said, "What? How could you not?" I mean, Yes.
Yeah, when we imagine that people had to go fetch water, sometimes a kilometer more, and now, we're not even, we just have to turn on a tap, and still that's not even good enough. So people are buying bottled water, which isn't even bottled, it's in plastic, the plastic's leaching in. It's a conundrum. I think we've covered a lot of the issues. Is there, and you've sort of given a last philosophy as well, but is there any parting message further that you would like to tell everybody?
Well, it'd be hard for me to impart passion, but don't be afraid of food. It's a wonderful thing. Cooking, it's great. It's creative. You enjoy what you eat so much more when you've got your hands in, when you've had some role to play, whether you've met someone you know who's making it, or you made those sprouts. So it's not just about the health value, but you will get a lot more out of it than you imagine. You'll get, spending more quality time with family, less stress. There's so many benefits to being involved in your food that don't be afraid of it and
embrace it.
And embrace it.
Smell your vegetables.
Don't be afraid to pick up my book.
Pick up the book, The Confident Food Shopper. This will help you.
Can I let them know where they might find it? Yeah.
Tell us about this.
So, and one thing I'll say is it is written for Canadians and Americans, but I will contrast things with the U.S., but there's no book out there for Canadians. Everything's written for Americans.
Right.
So it can be found on Amazon.ca, or any health food store can order it because it's carried by Now Foods, which is a supplement company. So they mainly make supplements, but it will be in a catalog. So any health food store across Canada could order it for you.
Okay. So you're looking for The Confident Food Shopper by Dr. Thalia Charney.
Yes.
There it is. It's a good read. It has some sarcasm in it, apparently.
It's not dry.
It's not dry.
It's not dry. It's anecdotal and humorous.
There you go.
With a lot of details and references.
There we are.
Yeah.
So this is what you need. Enjoy your food. Thank you.
Enjoy your food. It's
Thank
so
you,
good.
Talia, for coming in and talking
Thanks
with us
for
here.
interviewing me.
Very good. So
right.
until next time.
All right, till next
Okay.
time.